Morning, everyone. Call the meeting to order. Could we have approval of the agenda? Moved by Brian, seconded by Dan. All in favor? Carried. Minutes of the previous meeting, October 7th, 2021. Motion to approve, moved by Jim, seconded by Brian. All in favor? Carried. Any conflict of interest, pecuniary interest disclosure? Hearing none. OPP report, July to September 2021.
Good morning, everybody. I would, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a quick movement in regards to the delegations. Just before the report, I have with me today Chief Superintendent Carl Thomas, who is the Regional Commander of East Region. I also have Superintendent Lisa Wilhelm, who is my direct supervisor. Before I proceed to my report, I was wondering if we might allow Chief Thomas some time to address the board. He does have a commitment that he needs to leave for, and it would just allow me a little more time through the report rather than rushing through. Chief.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to spend some time talking with you today. As Mark indicated, Superintendent Lisa Wilhelm's here with me. She is one of two superintendents out of our regional headquarters. And she is responsible. One of her responsibilities are for 8 of our host attachments across the region. Our 2 superintendents split the region up with the number of detachments we have, and then she has other assigned responsibilities with some of our other units within the region. I just again, it's a pleasure being here today. We're trying to get out to all PSB meetings in person now. We were stuck doing some virtual meetings for the longest time because of COVID, and as we all know, COVID's impacted every single person in the world pretty well now, one way or another. For us, it's impacted our operations to a certain degree. Members definitely nervous about responding to calls and things like that, but I'm hoping we're slowly coming out of COVID. I don't know how far we are away from the end of it. I think it's a little ways yet with the different variants still coming out and things like that. But as an organization, I think we've done a pretty good job addressing, at least making our officers safe, and then in turn making communities safe within police interactions. I just wanted to cover off 4 priorities for our detachment commanders and for region. The pretty much in line with a lot of our community action plans as well as our provincial plan. The 4 are community engagement, enforcement, investigative excellence, and member acknowledgement. I'll just break that down a little bit, just so you understand kind of where we're coming from. The community engagement, COVID has definitely had an impact on events within our communities. And we've asked our detachment commanders for sure to engage in some of the community events. Our auxiliaries were out of the workplace for almost a year and a half because of COVID, and they are back into our detachments now as well, taking part in a lot of whether it's Santa Claus parades right now or food drives and things like that. And it's a great. Our auxiliaries are great because they work within our communities and really assist us, whether it's in community events or on patrol. Along with the community engagement is foot patrol too. I'm encouraging all detachment commanders to support foot patrol within our communities where it's feasible, to have that interaction both with community members and business owners. I think it's been a long time since we've been able to engage that way because of COVID, and just it hasn't been a priority. And I just think I could say community policing, but I think that's kind of a worn out term used over the years. But I think that's a true form of our community engagement is definitely in support of community policing. Our MCERT programs across region are growing. I would like to see more of them. I don't think there's argument there, because as law enforcement, we can't take that on ourselves. We can't arrest our way out of a lot of the issues we deal with within the health community. And I know the health community is struggling as well because of COVID and resourcing and things like that. So I look forward to the programs growing. They are doing well now. We're seeing a difference in relation to the interactions with some of our calls that, like I said, police, yes, we have a responsibility to assist our community, but we don't always have the answer for all of the issues that we respond to. Also asking detachment commanders to engage in our different community groups, to get out within there, having detachment members involved with those. A lot of our detachment members are engaged with the community naturally as a parent, maybe grandparent, with hockey, baseball, and things like that, and different sports and different community events. But we're just trying to have some of that representation from the OPP so our community members feel safer, better, and more comfortable maybe reporting things to police as time goes on. Enforcement, we have had a drop in enforcement across the province. It's just not within our region. COVID had a lot to do with that. Our members not doing the enforcement that we would have liked to have seen. I'm not going to make things up here. It's something we're striving to improve, and our stats, our enforcement, our traffic stops have been increasing over the last couple months. Our ride checks, our impaireds are definitely going up as well. So that is something that we're encouraging just to make our highways safer. And it's not always enforcement that makes our highways safer. Sometimes it's just presence, having a car parked in the right place at the right time to deter some of the bad driving habits that we have out there. We have an e-ticketing system now within our organization, where traditionally members had to write a ticket out physically. Now it's all done electronically for the most part, where members just swipe a driver's license and it'll print, filling out some other mandatory fills, but for the most part, it's all electronic. So you can do a traffic stop in 3 to 5 minutes for the most part now, and it's a system that continues to build and get better. We do have our SAVE teams, snowmobile, ATV, vessel enforcement team, that does get deployed across different detachments across the region to support either snowmobile patrol, ATV patrol, or vessel patrol, or just traffic enforcement within different areas across the region. Investigative excellence, we're really taking a victim-centered approach to make sure when we do have victims of crime, that we're there for them and provide the necessary support with the different community supports that are in place. On those, the clearance rate, the investigation on those. We have our street crime units that are doing a great job that target property crime and drug trafficking within our communities. I know there was a project here a little while ago in conjunction with our Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau that we look forward to continuing some of those projects as time goes on. And then just member acknowledgement. We have a healthy workplace team in place. We have been criticized in the past about not having the proper support to support our members with PTSD and other ailments that they may have. We have a force psychologist within region to support our members. We have a clinician, and then we have a care navigator. All those 3 roles are very pivotal, and then on top of that we have a peer support, which is a peer-to-peer support program where members may feel a little more comfortable coming forth to a peer versus, i.e. a psychologist or a clinician. I would be remiss to say, without walking out of here today, at 10 o'clock today, there will be an Auditor General report released that has been taken place over the last little while within the OPP. As we know, Auditor General reports sometimes are scary because we know we're going to get criticized, but I think it is also good, it puts the checks and balances in. So at 10 o'clock there will be an Auditor General report. There will be several recommendations in there that we can do better. I'm not saying we do everything wrong, but like I said, I think a report like this helps us identify issues that we may be lacking in. Number one, But also number two, it makes the public aware of some of our downfalls and some things that we may need in support from government and things like that. So if I walked away and didn't mention that today, everybody would think I'd be hiding something, but that is out at 10 o'clock today. I think there's 15 other Auditor General reports, but you'll see some things in there that you will be concerned about. So I'll give you a warning. I can't divulge those at this point, but I encourage all of you to review it, and please talk to Mark about it, and we'll do our best to address the issues in there and go from there. So that's all I have to say. Any questions, concerns? Yes, sir. I think it's impacted morale because of the way the media sells it, and the media is there to sell a story, and I respect that. They have a job to do. They need to identify some of our downfalls. You know what? I think if you break down defunding police and look at it more of a wholesome approach to, if we had other programs in place where police wouldn't have to respond to some calls, I don't think any community member is going to argue about that. If health had more money, more services to help us with the calls we go on. Right now it hasn't impacted us at all, but I think we learn from it because again, we need to grow programs and work in collaboration with our community partners. And I think that's what a lot of defunding police is. I think it's a term that is used, but I think if you break it down, it's more or less that collaboration with our community partners to try to take some of the issues away from police and then work with them to make our communities better, more wholesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'd be remiss in saying one more thing. And I actually was on the top of my notes, and I didn't say it when I started. Excuse me, everybody. We're very proud of Mark. I know he's new to detachment here, but he has policed within the communities before. Really proud of what he's doing, both within the detachment and the community. Mark was recently promoted, chair that we sat on the board, and he's doing us very proud, and I just want to thank Mark for the leadership he's providing within the detachment and within the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very kind words, Chief, and for addressing the board. Mr. Chair and the board, thank you very much for changing up the agenda and allowing Chief to address you this morning. I will immediately move on to my report, starting with page 7. Certainly, our community services for the third quarter have improved or have picked up significantly. Multiple of those meetings within the community with our partners, as the chief spoke to, really improving those partnerships and putting some of those non-policing responsibilities back to our community partners have really picked up in the third quarter. Moving on to page 8. And once again, playing off of what Chief mentioned in some of the regional priorities, you'll see in the month of September that the auxiliary unit was stood back up. They have been doing some proactive patrols in some of our more populous villages. We've started with South Stormont, so they're taking some Friday and Saturday evening shifts where they're out in a black and white, just doing some observing and reporting back to the NCO that is working. And that gives us that increased visible presence in some of our more populous areas. We are going to be rolling that out to several more communities within the United Counties, Alexandria, Winchester, Morrisburg, to really, increase that presence of having a cruiser and that immediate reporting back rather than waiting for a citizen to make that call. The auxiliary unit will be able to make that call directly to us. My apologies. If we take a look at page 11, so we had just under 1,800 hours of patrol cruiser hours, whether those be directed by the detachment or by the officers themselves. Those are consistent with the 2020 numbers. We had 49 hours of foot patrol, which I was very happy to see. As I'm sure you're aware of the composition of the United Counties, we don't, Winchester and Alexandria being our two biggest villages, sometimes foot patrol can be challenging. There's not a lot of areas, but I've certainly put it to my NCOs that that opportunity still exists. We do have Main Street in Morrisburg, Long Sault, we have the plaza. The same thing goes for Ingleside, Alexandria. You can take a walk down Main Street. The main thing that I'm encouraging the NCOs and the officers to do is less time in the car and more time on foot. So take a walk rather than doing something in your car. If they have the opportunity to be at one of the plazas, rather than just do what they need to do in the one business, take a walk down the plaza, take a walk through all of them, make some community contacts, shake some hands, give people a smile, really get back to that fundamental community policing where the citizens that we serve really get to know the officers that are serving their communities. Bring you to page 12. So we did have one fatal motor vehicle or fatal vehicle collision. It was an ATV and it was alcohol related. So the cause was alcohol related. It did occur on private property. Obviously incredibly challenging for us to police on people's private properties when they're operating ATVs, which is well within their right. It just goes to show that alcohol does affect the operation of any vehicle anywhere, and that's why we have some of those laws. But unless we're getting a direct call, if we see somebody operating an ATV on private property, unless we've been implicitly invited or we see a criminal offense occurring, we're very limited in our ability to enter that property and execute a traffic stop or engage in that conversation. Moving on to page 14, so the traffic statistics, and looking down specifically at the traffic-related charges. So everything was, as compared to the first two quarters, we've seen an increase from our first two quarters in the number of traffic stops and the number of charges that have been laid. There's also an increase from year over year from the third quarter of 2020. So I am encouraged by that. Our traffic plan is just beginning to become implemented in the fourth quarter, and I am very encouraged that we are going to continue to see our traffic statistics, not only for patrol hours, traffic stops, and charges all continue to regularly increase. It is something that I am making an absolute priority for our detachment because, as I mentioned to the board before, traffic safety is absolutely one of my biggest priorities. Moving on to page 15. On page 15, I'll have the board note that I'm pleased to see that certainly in the violent crime statistics, we did see a decrease in the quarter and year over year from 2020. And in the property crime, we are finally starting to see a decrease in the amount of fraud-related calls that are being reported at the detachment. I know we've spoken at pretty much every meeting that I've had in regards to those fraud-related calls, whether they be identity and the cause of them. Just reminding the board that they are related to the Desjardins Case Populaire data breach and the double reporting that they have made their clients make. Mr. Chair, the double reporting, just to remind the board, was the first one they had to report was if the bank reported to them that they were a victim of identity, their data was compromised, they needed to report it to the police and get an occurrence number in order to receive compensation from the bank and also additional protective services from creditors. The second one was if they were actually, the actual identity theft actually occurred. they needed to report it a second time. So in some instances, we got double the amount of calls. There was a charge laid in Quebec to the person who committed the data breach because it was internal. It was not an external hack; it was an internal, and we are able to relate all those back to that one charge. But once again, when we look at the billing model, or we look at the calls for service for billing, you're still going to see that very high increase in the fraud-related calls for service that we have received. So, just bring your attention to that. In regards to the calls for service, once again, if you quickly bring your attention to page 19 and look at the property crimes, particularly fraud, you will see that in the quarter and compared to the first and second quarter that I reported on, you will definitely see a significant decrease in the amount that are being reported. So once again, that's all good news. Calls for service are coming down. And I anticipate that in the fourth quarter report, from what I've seen thus far, the quarter's not done yet, but that we'll see levels return to probably what they were normally reported at, probably at the 2019 levels. I believe, as far as the report goes, that is all I have that I wanted to highlight during this report. And I leave it to the board for questions, Mr. Chair. Morning, Dan. How are you this morning? So I can certainly comment on that. I will say that there has been a slight uptick. So there definitely has been an increase in the number of drug recognition expert evaluations that we do. So for the board's information, when it comes to alcohol, we have electronic and mechanical instrumentation that will allow us to measure the exact concentration of alcohol in somebody's blood, and that assists us in determining whether they are over the legal limit or not. When it comes to drug-related offenses, that is done by a drug recognition expert, and they are a series of physical tests. Now, there is a bodily fluid test that accompanies that drug recognition expert's evaluation, but the primary evaluation for determining whether a person is impaired by drugs or not is a physical evaluation. We have seen an uptick in demands for, certainly have seen an uptick in demands for drug recognition experts. That I would not relate it all to cannabis use. I would also relate it to that we have more of them and the officers are becoming more frequent. So where they see signs of impairment, but they are not necessarily relating them to alcohol, those drug recognition experts are being called on more and more frequently to provide evaluations of the people that are being arrested.
Can you hear me now? Okay. As a sidebar issue, if I may, in relation to the retail cannabis outlets that are springing up like mushrooms all over the counties, have we had any charges related back to those retail outlets?
The retail outlets specifically that are springing up in some of the smaller stores, no, there haven't been any charges. They are primarily regulated by Health Canada, and we have not received any calls for service. I'm sure the board can note, though, that there have, before I was the detachment commander in the first quarter, and the second quarter, we did have several, our Community Street Crime Unit, along with our Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau, did execute several warrants in Dundas in regards to cannabis grow operations that were operating with fraudulently obtained Health Canada or operating outside of their Health Canada license mandates. So no, there hasn't been anything yet, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your report, Mark. I just wondered if you received many calls with regards to ransomware, because a lot of municipalities are stepping up to, putting walls up to stop this. And you said earlier about, fraud going down and decreasing in terms of the amount of people that are creating the fraud. But is there an increase on this ransomware?
So in regards to those, no, we haven't seen an increase. We are still seeing and we are actively almost bi-weekly. So we are still seeing it's still coming through the phones. So the telephone scams, I'm sure everybody gets a couple of calls a week on their personal device, telling them that they're going to be arrested if they don't press 1, and so on and so forth. But as far as the ransomware through electronic devices, people's devices being taken over, we have not had an increase of reported ones. Actually, and I can't think of any that have come across in the last quarter, for either through residents or through businesses, commercial entities. I know that certainly the town of Clarence Rockland recently had one. Kemptville Hospital recently had one, so certainly not saying it's not going to happen to us and that we're not going to be immune to those types of attacks, but not at this time.
G. Yeah, the Zone 2 fall meeting minutes and a thank you letter from Koala Place. So items for discussion, defibrillator replacements. Mark?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. As you are all aware, during last year's budget, there was $3,000 set aside for new defibrillator batteries. Just to give you a little bit of history, so approximately 15 years ago, the PSB in the United Counties approved the purchase of 15 Stryker 500 defibrillator units to be taken out on regular patrol with our officers. They have served us incredibly well. Throughout those 15 years. 12 were purchased, and that puts 2 in every detachment, making sure that there was always a couple out in every county and ready to go. As per the, after discussions with Kimberly when I arrived, she reminded me that that $3,000 needed to be purchased for new batteries for the units. What we were not told by the supplier last year was that they were discontinuing that make and model and the batteries. So we assumed they might have a surplus of batteries for those units for this year. They do not. So when they discontinued making them, we don't have any batteries. Now, that to said, the current 12 units we do have, we at the detachment did have a few spares. So we've looked at the life, we've worked at the company, and we have approximately 1 year of life left in all of those defibrillators. So we're good for 1 year. However, the $3,000 that came from the board this year to replace those batteries, we are unable to spend. Including in your packages, I have included 2 quotes from the most popular, two most popular companies, along from with an information package behind the Zoll model. So for the board's I can quickly go through it, but the new Stryker 1000 units are, for 12 units, is just over $29,000, and that is, they're also giving us a credit for the return of the old units. I can say that we will have the same problem that we currently have right now, where Stryker has their own made-in-house battery pack. The second package I've provided you, which is a little more detailed and gives some more information, is from Zoll. Zoll is the company that the Ottawa Paramedic Service uses, SDG paramedics, and that you see in a lot of arenas. For 12 defibrillator units, it is $19,000, which is a significant $10,000 discount. But the best thing about the Zoll units is that they take regular C lithium batteries that we can purchase at Canadian Tire. They require no software updates. They're good to go. They are very, very user-friendly. And they would include, we've been told that if they are being purchased for police use to go in the back of our cars, that Zoll would work with us to supply some protective cases for them as well at no additional cost to us. So certainly behind the defibrillators, I can tell you that we are one of the only detachments, if not the only one, in East Region that carries them out on patrol on a regular basis. I would say, you know, how frequently do they get used? Probably very rarely, but it is an absolute essential tool that our officers take out regularly, and we could be the first ones to respond to a medical call for service at any point, which we oftentimes are. And I would say that the loss of not having them anymore would be a detriment to the people we are serving and to the tools in the toolbox we have. So, Mr. Chair, I've spoken a little bit about Kimberly to Kimberly about this morning. Tim, we may seek your input on this one. I am not sure how to proceed with the $3,000. I am unable to spend those funds this year, and I do not know whether it goes through County Council or through the board for the purchase of new units. But I do have two requests for the boards. The first one would be that we reallocate the $3,000 from this year's purchase into next year's funds. And if we were able to, while working with the United Counties, if an ask was able to be made of them for new units and it be supported by the board.
Thank you. Does the province pay any money towards defibrillators for the service for the OPP, the first responders?
They do not. They put them in our buildings. So they are supplied for our buildings, but they're not supplied for individual patrol. They've left that, the detachments that do have them, and I can tell you they are very, very rare throughout the service. I believe we do. I can speak that I know Caledon Detachment has them, but there aren't too many others, and no, they don't supply any money towards those.
Subsequent, thank you. How often, or do you have any record of the amount of times that the police officers use the defibrillators to actually save people?
I don't, Your Worship. I did look into it. I know for the 2021 calendar year, they are out on patrol all the time, but they have not been used yet. And that's as far as I could go back at this time.
Still important for officers to carry the defibs because, like you say, lots of times you respond before the ambulance or the fire department. So I think it's important that we continue that progress.
I would certainly agree with you, Your Worship, and I would also add that you know, having the tool there is important, and we should distinguish used and deployed. So when our officers are giving life-saving measures and that defibrillator is there, they're hooking it up and getting ready. Whether or not the defibrillator chooses to activate, that's out of our control, right? It's automatic. All the sensors do everything. It provides the instructions to the officers what to do. But I can tell you that they're always at the ready. So once again, very important life-saving tool that I would hate to see us lose.
So my memory is not very good, but did you say that SDG originally purchased those?
Yes, that's the information that I was given. I asked if it was the board, and they said it was the United Counties.
I can't recall either, but I think obviously we're going ahead to another year, but my other question would be is if the board or the county or whatever did decide, what would the option be of half as many, seeing they don't get used that often? Like, is one in every county do the trick, or just a question?
So I will be honest, Mr. Chair. I never ever want to give anything back. I always like to get more. But I would certainly say, Mr. Chair, that with our shift changes and so on and so forth, and just allowing for any mishaps, that with the 5 detachments, I would say at a minimum. A 10 would be, rather than the 12 that is in the quote, 10. That would give us 2 per detachment, and I think that's an absolutely reasonable number, because as I'm sure you're aware, with our geography, right, our cars can be, spread out almost anywhere, and being able to provide that type of coverage would be best.
I don't know what the board thinks, but I think it should be deferred for now. But on the other hand, seeing there's a bit of time, I would kind of recommend that the $3,000 be put forward to seeing it can't be purchased now. And I would wonder if we can, maybe as a board, even dig into, somebody wanting to be a nice guy and donate those things over the next few months. There's always people looking to get rid of money.
What's the name of your business again?
So I'm looking for comments.
Yeah, we do have time, as Mark suggested, but if you want to look for alternate fundraising methods, I think it's a good idea, maybe, if somebody wants to donate. But I think it's very important, again, to have these units in our vehicles, because if it only saves one life, it's worth $30,000 is worth it, right? For me, as far as I'm concerned. Especially, we're such a big agriculture sector out there. I mean, there are a lot of farmers out in the fields and things like that, where it would take a long time for the ambulance to get there, like you're looking 18, maybe 20 minutes possibly. So, it's important that accidents, things like that we have those units available for in the event that it's needed. So, yeah, I think if you want to wait and look and see if there's any alternative fundraisers out there or people that want to donate anything, I can't see a problem with that.
Yeah, I think that I would support the request, but I would ask that Kimberly and Tim take a look at how we can cooperatively go forward with this. Like, our committee has a little bit of money, but I mean, we're only talking about 19,000 here, if I'm reading this right. So we've certainly had some discussions with figures much bigger than this. So let's see what we can come back with at budget time and respond to the request. Thank you.
I have to add my support to this request as well. It's an essential piece of equipment that has proven time and time again, when it is deployed, it's very effective. So again, drawing on Mayor McGillis's comments, if we save one life, it's made it well worthwhile.
No, Mr. Chair, no, I think that's reasonable. Kimberly and I can take a look at what some options out there. And I will note that the budget, including the Police Services Board budget, is going to council next Wednesday, Thursday for review. So if it's going to be part of that budget, we're going to have to do it fairly quickly. I don't know, in the context of your comment around donations, that certainly won't give us enough time to kind of canvass around that. So however, it could be deferred. What we could do is defer it. Council could pass the budget, and if decision is made to bring it back forward and fund it, then an amendment to the budget could be made. That's certainly possible. So.
Just one note, we do have, through you, Mr. Chair, the $3,000 in the 2021 budget that's not used. If we could pass a motion today and add that to the 2022 budget, then we don't lose that. It'll bring it forward. It'll go through with the PSB budget next week.
Okay, and what's the actual date that the ones we have now are supposed to self-disintegrate?
We're estimating about November 1st. So they're so old that there's no battery indicator on them. So we estimate through basically a spreadsheet about how long we get every time we change a battery out. So we have one unit that we've just changed the last battery that we have out in, and we're looking at about 18 months before that last unit is finished, but they will start, we're looking at about this summer before one of the 12 units, the battery pack is dead, and we're no longer able to service it. And as I mentioned, we've checked with Stryker, there's nothing on Kijiji, there's nothing, we've looked at pretty much every other source, and they've said no. And there's just nothing, there's no other options for us.
Well, I just wonder if it was worth checking with the paramedics. Like, at one time, and not that long ago, there was so many of them given away to, well, buildings that I figured didn't even need one. Like, maybe they would feel bad and just grab a few more. Is it worth a call? Brian.
Yeah, maybe contact the Ministry of Health and see if there's any money available for the defibrillators. It really raises concerns to me, though, people or industries or even municipalities with the arenas and community halls that have them. I wonder if they know that there's a possibility that the batteries are discontinued for the units they have. That's something that maybe, do they contact, does anybody contact them and say, listen, your batteries are discontinued, you need to buy a new unit or whatever?
I would agree with you, Mr. Worship, and I actually took a walk through the Long Sault detachment this morning, and I was looking at our Zoll units that we have on the wall, and I pulled one out and made the alarm sound, but opened the battery pack at the back and was like, oh good, these take the regular C lithium batteries that, once again, we can purchase anywhere at Canadian Tire. But that would absolutely be an area of concern for me, right? Like, what's the lifespan on these battery packs? And secondly, is if they are those internally manufactured ones, what's the availability going to be for them?
Just a curiosity, the invoice itself is addressed to an address that I'm not familiar with. Maybe Mark could comment on that. It's to the Ontario Provincial Police Medical, Ontario Provincial Police on Brock Street in Kingston.
Dan, I'm not sure what that is. I know that we requested, I don't know if they populated that address. I know that when we requested the quote from them, I'm not sure where they got that address or that name from.
Where should it have gone?
It should have gone to, it should be Ontario Provincial Police, Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry Detachment, and our address on Mill Rush in Long Sault.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion to put forth the $3,000 from the 2021 to the 2022 budget. Moved by Jim, seconded by Brian. All in favor? Carried.
through you, Mr. Chair, I'll get to work with Mark and we'll look into hopefully some funding opportunities and then report back to the board on this in the new year.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll speak with Kimberly afterwards, what we can get on the horn with before County Council before before next week.
Any new business? Motion for adjournment? Moved by Jim, seconded by Dan. All in favor? Carried.